Welcome, and thank you for joining us for a virtual town hall meeting designed for those who support younger learners. I'm Jeannie Forrest, and I serve as ACSI's Assistant Director of Early Education. On behalf of the Early Ed team here at ACSI, we're so thankful for you, and we're glad you're able to join us today. Here at ACSI, we are listening to your concerns, and we're listening even more so closely during this pandemic. These town hall meetings provide a setting where you can hear what others are doing in response to the current challenges for teaching and learning. We also want to provide opportunity for you to have your questions answered among educators, friends, and colleagues. Today's guest speaker will help us understand the need for nurturing attachment, especially during this unique time, as we strive to focus on the social and emotional development of young learners. After our guest speaker shares, you will have an opportunity to have your questions answered. If you have not had a chance, feel free to submit a question on the Q&A icon located at the bottom of your screen. These questions will be collected and monitored, and we'll present them to our guest speaker and panelists after they share. I'd like to introduce you to ACSI's Director of Early Education, Sarah Jo Dillard.
Well, hello, everyone, and thank you, Jeannie, and thanks so much to our behind-the-scenes assistant, Lisa Harmon, for helping us out today. So our topic is maintaining healthy attachments with children during a crisis, which we are certainly in right now. And we know that healthy relational patterns are developed in young children, and when they are healthy, the children will continue to develop close relationships all throughout their life. And we know the most important relationships in a child's life is his or her parents, but right behind those attachments are the ones children have with their extended family members and their teachers. And attachments in relationships are often interrupted during a crisis. And the longer the crisis, the more apt the interrupted attachment. And right now, we know that children all across the world are experiencing an interruption of their routine and their relationships with their teachers and their friends during school closing. In our speaker's book, Nurturing Healthy Attachment, Dr. Barbara Sorrells writes this: God's work in our lives bears much fruit when we allow the cultivation of his seeds in our hearts. And children attending our Christian schools have the opportunity to learn about God's unconditional love for them, as their teachers demonstrate God's love by displaying the fruits of the Spirit. And children develop emotional security when they're loved by their parents and loved by their teachers, as they exhibit love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and faithfulness and gentleness and self-control. And when God's love is truly lavished onto children by people who genuinely love them and express that love very often in various ways, those children are being equipped to have positive relationships throughout their lifetime. So today we're going to take a look at some of the practical ways to keep healthy attachments in check during this pandemic and as schools start back up this summer and this fall. So let's pray, and then I'll introduce our guests. Father, we thank you so much for who you are. We thank you that you show us in your word the fruits of the Spirit. And by using these fruits and by having these evidence in our lives, we can develop deep, abiding, loving relationships with children and with their parents. So, Father, I thank you for this opportunity today to talk about this important subject. We thank you for Barbara and the panelists who have joined us. We ask that their words would go deep into our hearts and that we would be able to hear and listen and take in all of the messages that are provided today. Thank you, Jesus, for loving us. Amen. Well, today we have with us Dr. Barbara Sorrells, and she is a longtime friend of ACSI. She is a child development specialist. She's an educator, and she's a consultant with a heart for children from hard places. And as the founder of Connected Kids, she provides educators and parents and advocates with compassionate, evidence-based strategies for guiding children through trauma and other challenges. And Dr. Sorrell's approach is based on the belief that when children feel connected to themselves, their families, and the world around them, they can overcome even the darkest of circumstances and reach their fullest potential. Prior to founding Connected Kids, Dr. Sorrell spent more than 20 years in education as a classroom teacher, and she was a founder and director of several early childhood centers, and she was also a professor of graduate and undergraduate studies in the early childhood education program at Oklahoma State University. Dr. Sorrell is the author of the award-winning book, Reaching and Teaching Children Exposed to Trauma, and she's also the co-author of Nurturing Healthy Attachment, Building Parent-Child Connections to Last a Lifetime. Dr. Sorrell, welcome to our town hall today. We are so glad that you have joined us.
It's always exciting to me to be able to talk to a faith-based audience because it's challenging when we can't leave that, have to leave that aspect out. And today I want to just share with you something that I recently found that I ran across that I thought was so interesting. In 1942, C.S. Lewis wrote, Satan says, I will cause anxiety, fear, and panic, and I will shut down businesses, schools, places of worship, and sports events, and I will cause economic turmoil. But Jesus says, I will bring together neighbors, restore the family unit. I will bring dinner back to the kitchen table. I will help people slow down their lives and appreciate what really matters. I will teach my children to rely on me and not the world. And I will teach my children to trust me and not their material resources and money. And I thought, how prophetic. And that's one of the silver linings that I have seen, some even in my own neighborhood. I see families out walking together, playing together. I actually see parents, dads throwing the baseball back and forth with their children, playing badminton in their yards. And so my prayer is that through this time, their connections will be strengthened. And first of all, I just want to say thank you, teachers, for all that you've done. You are truly on the front lines of this. You are truly those essential workers. My mantra has always been, if you need a job done, just ask a teacher. And you have been flexible. You have scrambled and pulled things together for a very different time. Some of you are teaching online. You've never done it before. You're learning new things. So it's been a learning curve for all of us. And so thank you so much for your dedication to this. I think one of the things that we need to realize, to remember as we go into this conversation, is that we are all in the same storm, but we're in different boats, because this pandemic has affected all of us in many different ways. For some, it's just been a pause in our everyday routines. No one in our family has lost jobs. No one has been ill. It's actually just kind of been, in a way, for some, a vacation in the midst of all this. We've kind of sailed right through it, but for others, our boat has literally capsized. For those of you whose husbands have lost jobs, wives have lost jobs, you may have been touched by the virus itself. Family members have become ill. You may have even lost family members. But then all of us have been touched in some way in terms of how it's impacted our children. For some of you, the end of school was more like an amputation. I know in our area, many schools broke for spring break and then never went back. They had no idea on that Friday when they walked out the door that would be the last time they would be together through the end of the year. So there's all kinds of emotions being felt and experienced by all of us. But I would say that, in our lives, there's always stress. Life is stressful. But there are those things that we would consider positive stress. Typically, those things are what we would say are moderate and short-lived. So, for example, a child going to the doctor to get a shot, that's moderate stress, and with support from mom and dad, doctors and nurses, the child gets through it and is no worse through the wear. I mean, it's actually these experiences in life that make us stronger. That first day of childcare, that first day of school is stressful for young children, but with supportive teachers and families, the child moves through that and is actually one of those things that builds resilience. I would say that the impact of COVID hopefully will be tolerable stress for our children. It's those things that are potentially disruptive to development. They're generally limited in scope of time. This coronavirus is going to go on for months and hopefully not years. But these are the things where children, to move through these things, need lots and lots of connection to primary caregivers, connection to parents, so that it doesn't move into what we would call toxic stress. And toxic stress are those situations that bring about actual mental and emotional distress, even physical distress. And this usually would happen when children don't have the resources that they need. They don't have those supportive relationships or innocence left to navigate this whole thing by themselves. My daughter was out on her lunch break the other day in our town and called me in tears. She said a child probably about 6 years old and holding the hand of another child about 2 or 3, and they were walking alongside a really busy road in our town. And so our guess is this is probably a child whose mom and dad have to work and they're left home alone to fend for themselves. Those are the children that we worry about. And so it's all about those connections that we maintain with families, with children, so that it doesn't move into that toxic stress that has the potential of being very disruptive to development. One of the things that we can do is to send cards and notes. I would say that even with my own grandchildren, we have phone calls, but there's nothing that they enjoy more than receiving a note or a card, because preschoolers are very concrete, and they have that card that says, "I thought of you," and they show them to their friends. They put them on their wall. They put them on their nightstand. They are proud of those cards and letters that they get from Nana. And likewise, I am sure that your children will be thrilled to hear from you. I know that these days with technology, we can stay connected with children through FaceTime calls, through Zoom. I sat and watched my 4-year-old grandson have a Zoom call with his classmates, and it was very interesting to watch. But those concrete evidences that my teachers thought of me. Some other ideas that I have seen in our neighborhood is a drive-by pizza party. One of the local, it was actually a community center that partners with a school. They sponsored a drive-by pizza party where families could just drive by, get a slice of pizza for everybody in their family. Of course, people serving it were social distancing with masks and such, but it was still a fun way for them to see their teachers, if even just for a short moment of time, and just talk to them at a distance. Now, I know that in private school settings, you often don't have community schools, and this may or may not be possible, but there have been other schools that have had parades in the neighborhood. All the teachers get in their cars, decorate their car, they drive through the neighborhood, everybody's alerted ahead of time, and they've got their cars decorated, they're honking their horns, and so families and children can see their teachers in that way. But I would say any creative thing that you can think of. I've seen pictures on the news, on Facebook, of teachers standing outside the windows of children's homes talking to them through the window. There was a teacher in our community who actually put together backpacks and left them on the doorsteps of their kids. These tangible ways that say, I'm thinking about you and I hold you in mind. I know that some of you have been scrambling to figure out how to have meaningful lessons and do some meaningful teaching online. And I would just have to say here that really academics isn't our primary concern. And even when we get back to school, some of the comments I've heard is, we're going to hit those academics really hard. That's really not what we want to do. That's not really where we want to go with this. Because if we can get our children through this situation with a sense of felt safety and also feeling connected to teachers, to families, we're going to be able to do that catch up. It's going to be just fine. But if we don't get our children through this situation with a sense of felt safety and still maintaining those connections, it's going to be very challenging to move them forward in any sort of academic way. And so, and I know that trying to teach very young children through technology, it can be very challenging without resorting to what I would consider nothing more than online technological worksheets. Electronic worksheets is not where we want to go either, but I would say just encouraging families to read together. Getting together, if you're going to do a Zoom kind of situation, just reading some of their favorite stories together. It's more about the connection and not so much the academics. But I would certainly encourage families to be reading to their children on a daily basis. And as I said, it's about getting children through this situation with a sense of felt safety and emotional connection. So I would say that as you look forward to the new year, and if you've been even thinking in any sort of way about looping, this would be the year to do this. And I know that some folks have different definitions of looping. In my definition of looping, it's where, for example, a teacher starts out teaching first grade and then loops up to second grade next year with that same group of children. This would be a perfect time to do that, to loop and go back to that same teacher that you had last year. You know, if I was in the 4-year-old classroom, I go back to that 4-year-old teacher who now moves into kindergarten. Or establishing family groupings. I know that some folks have been, in some states, they've been recommending family groupings to keep siblings together because they've already been exposed to one another at home, and that reduces the exposure to children from other families. That's a challenging situation. It's very doable. Actually, Zales Corporation in Dallas, Texas, last time I paid a visit to them, which has been a few years ago, they do family groupings. They keep sibling groups together, birth through 5 years of age. It takes some adjustment and some figuring out, but once people do it, they love it. And then, of course, multi-age classrooms. If we're going to do a multi-age classroom, I would recommend doing baby, infants, and toddlers, and then doing 3 to 5. I've done it. It works beautifully. And these are some ways that we can maintain that relationship stability, which is going to be so critical during this time, because that unpredictability and that loss of connection can be very disruptive to children. And of course, we're going to have the challenge, and it's varying from state to state in terms of guidelines. I looked on CDC guidelines. In the last couple of days, I check periodically to see what they're recommending. To be honest, when I was on this morning, I saw nothing that referred to masks. But if your state is requiring masks, using clear masks where children can see your face, and I'm especially worried about our very youngest children. The younger the child is, the greater the impact this potentially has for them in terms of disruptive relationships. Because attachment comes online and those connections come online so much through those nonverbal cues, through our facial expression, through soft eyes, through our tone of voice, through the rhythmicity of our voice. And when you have a mask over your face, all those things become very challenging. So if they are requiring masks, I would seek out clear masks to use. And in terms of defining space, it's going to be very challenging, as you already know, to help littles to stay at a distance because they're just all about togetherness. But one strategy you could use is hula hoops. You come together to read on the carpet, and instead of kids huddled up together, everybody stays inside their hoop. And we turn it into something playful, like we're in the ocean and we don't want our toes to get nibbled on by the shark or alligator. We don't want our fingers to be nibbled on, and everybody keeps their body parts inside of a hula hoop. Creating a tent village, cardboard box houses, or fort play. Kids love tents. Kids love cardboard houses, and we might want to create a village where, especially like during rest times or having quiet times throughout the day, children can be in their little fort, their little house that they decorate, that they create. Is a way of social distancing in a playful way. It might just be a blanket or a sheet thrown over a table or a group of chairs, you know, finding playful, fun ways for children to maintain that. And I also say that anything you can do inside, you can do out. And we know that being outdoors is a great way to social distance. As I walk around my neighborhood, I see people out in the yard in their lawn chairs. I see people clearly having gatherings in their garage where everybody's kind of able to stay at a distance. And I say that, you know, especially this time of year in many parts of the country, the weather is perfect for that outdoor play. And you might have a book tent with a wagon. Somebody's responsible for pulling the wagon out every day. Our book tent is where we go to read books. I put plastic swimming pools outside, you know, those plastic molded kind of things that are, you know, relatively inexpensive. You can put manipulatives there, put your Legos in there. Kids sit in the plastic swimming pools to play with Legos. You know, you can do building outside with plastic crates. You can have art easels outside. I had a center one time where we mounted a piece of plexiglass on some landscape timbers, and the children actually painted on the plexiglass and used a squeegee and a bucket of water to clear the paint off. Putting picnic tables outside for children to do snack and lunch. There's all kinds of math games that you can play outside on the playground. You can practice your writing, kids writing their names with chalk on the sidewalk. And of course, think about all the science that you can do through gardening, through planting, planting those butterfly gardens, watching those roly-polies. There's so much learning that we can do on the outside. And so this is kind of the flip side of what I hope comes out of this, is that we become resourceful and we look at different ways of accomplishing the same goal. And so, of course, when children come back together and are together, giving them a voice, the younger the child is, the less able they're going to be able to share their feelings. They're going to communicate more through behavior, through drawing, through dramatic play. So giving children lots and lots of art materials. And of course, these are from older children, but even our littles will express themselves through art, giving them lots of opportunity for dramatic play. This is a shot from our therapeutic preschool that we had for 2 years. And play is the way children process emotion. And I would have lots of accessories and props for just play at home, hospital play, ambulance play, veterinarian play, where children have the opportunity to act out those emotions, those situations that they have encountered. It's in a sense a window on their mind. I say pay attention to what children are playing. I would love to be a fly on the wall in schools, in childcare centers all around our country, and see what's going on with regard to play. And of course, visual arts. Here's a little book that one of the kids made, my book about my family. And having children paint, draw, do finger painting, all kinds of art materials in terms of how they feel. I would also expect regression. Children are going to be much more easily triggered. You're going to have some kiddos who have meltdowns, especially those whose families are significantly touched by this pandemic. Those children, mom or dad might be a nurse or a doctor or one of those first responders, and remembering that comfort is found in connection to people. And, you know, this is a time, if you've been thinking about creating sensory boxes in terms of calm down things for children, I always think in terms of the 5 senses: things to hear, things to see, things to taste, touch, and smell, and putting something of one of those 5 senses in a box. It's a calm down box. lots of sand and water play. Sand and water play is a regulatory tool. Thinking in terms of that sensory input is so calming to children. And of course, this is such a fabulous opportunity to teach our children and model for them just our faith in God and how He is our high tower, how we can abide in the shadow of the Almighty, and just coming together on a daily basis and praying with the children, not in a scary way. I think I've heard people pray in ways that are very frightening to children, but thanking God for His protection and reassuring children that you are doing all that you can to keep them safe. Mom and Dad is doing all that they can to keep them safe, and God is watching over us and hasn't forgotten us. And just remembering beginning and opening our day with prayer and thanksgiving, I think has enormous benefit to our children. So those are just a few brief ideas in this amount of time that we have. And so I will turn it back over to our other guests.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sorrells. That was such good information, and I'm so glad we're recording this so everyone can listen and just absorb that over maybe several times to go through it. So our next guest is Melinda Glenn, and she is the director of the Joy Center Christian Early Learning, and that's located in Camp Hill, Pennsylvania. And Melinda and her staff, they serve infants through pre-K, and they are currently closed, but Melinda told us right before she went on today that they are actually going to open next Friday. So she has 1 week to get ready for that. So they are a little panicked there. But Melinda, go ahead and share with us some of the insights that you have and that you're currently doing with your parents and children.
Hey, thanks, Sarah Jo. I'm excited to share with you. Joy Center we've been making it up as we go along, but the number one priority for us has been to stay connected. And just like Dr. Sorrell just said, we keep reminding one another that the comfort is found in the connection. And when early ed teachers disappear from children's lives, it makes everybody uncomfortable. Teachers are sad and children are sad and everyone is confused. And so we've worked really hard to make sure that we've stayed connected. And a few of those ways, and Dr. Sorrell has outlined many of the things that we've done, but we've done lots of face-to-face virtually, right? So Zoom meetings with older classes, which really is a zoo. It's just nothing less than a zoo. But the children love it. They bring their show and tell, and I come and sing with them a little bit, or teachers read, or they get to talk about their feelings, which is exciting because you get to hear the connection between the children. And that's been a good thing. We did something called a drive-by, what do we call it? A drive-by book club. And I ordered some things from Scholastic and I invited the parents to bring their children to drive by. And as they did, then we had boxes of books that children could choose from. And our first idea was maybe it would be like a lending library, but it turned out that we just gave them to the children because we wanted them to continue to read at home. Some of our teachers did, and this is not original, it was all over Facebook and other social media sites, but some of our teachers did flat teachers. So they made either after Flat Stanley, right? So they made themselves flat and they sent them in a card to all of the children with instructions to take them on their adventures at home and draw pictures about what they were doing with their flat teachers. Some of our teachers put their own faces on them. Some of them did little emoji things. And it's been amazing to me the number of children who have sent things back to their teachers about what they're doing. Lots of cards, Dr. talked about that. Lots of handwritten cards. I've gone through tons and tons of those. And inside, what I've tried to do is print photos. You know, we do a lot of photos on social media, and I know that each of us have phones that are stored with photos, but what I've gone through is printed photos of me with a child, or a teacher with a child, or two best buddies together, and print those and send them in cards. I think there's a lot to be said about children who can carry a photo around and hold on to that. It's tangible, and maybe even sleep with the photo. One of the things I've done is FaceTime with children individually and get them to talk to me about what they're thinking about and what they're feeling, and do story starters and ask them to complete the story. And that gives me an idea of what they're thinking and what they're feeling about. And then, of course, as a Christian school, then at the time we can end that in prayer. And with our older 3, 4s, and 5-year-olds, I ask them to pray. And I ask them to pray for their family, and I ask them to pray for me. And one of the things that I've been able to share with children is that, you know, this is a frustrating time, that we can't be together and we have to stay inside, and we're staying inside to stay safe. But it's frustrating. And so when we talk about those feelings and we make them real, it reminds me of the Mr. Rogers, right? We make them real, and we make them something that are not scary, simply because we talk about them. So, the one thing that Dr. Stroll talked about that we're going to have to think about here in Pennsylvania is, right now, we're going to have to wear masks when we go back. And we've not been able to find clear masks, but we have sure tried. And so we've been talking to children about watching our eyes and watching our eyebrows and making sure that we can read what's going on up here, and then communicating with children, that if they listen to our voices, that's also going to give them some great cues. And then communicating with families to practice some of those things, so children are not afraid. One of the things I'm greatly concerned about is children coming back into our centers with, they have to take their shoes off, and we have to take their temperatures as they walk through the door, and they're not allowed to bring their loveys or their backpacks, and mommies and daddies are going to have to say goodbye at the door, and teachers walk them to their classrooms. And what has gone from an environment of complete love and family atmosphere and just a gentle kind of emotion, because of regulations, we're having to go to a much more, I don't know, it's just an environment that I don't love. And so we've been practicing and talking about that with children one-on-one on FaceTime, and asking parents to have conversations about those things too. So it's certainly something that we're navigating as we go, but I'm glad to have had a chance to share with you.
Melinda, thank you so much for sharing. Those were great ideas, and just hearing the compassion in your voice for the children is just so special. So thank you so much. Our next panelist is Wendy May, and Wendy is the preschool director of Olive Knolls Christian School, and they're located in Bakersfield, California. And Wendy oversees the teachers of children 18 months through pre-K, and they are currently open for essential workers, and they're keeping their ratios 1 to 10 or even lower. So Wendy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. We are definitely a little bit different here at this time in our life. I will tell you, when we were talking about this attachment thing, me as a director, I have had attachment issues. I miss the loudness in my halls. I miss the silliness. I miss hearing my teachers with all these kids, and I miss all these kids coming into my office and saying hi to me every morning. It is very hard, even as an adult, to deal with the idea that I'm not seeing my students on a regular basis. And but for us, as we're staying open, we currently do not have to wear masks. We are very respectful towards people who feel like they want to wear one, or if they have a student that wants to wear one or needs to wear one, we will encourage that and try to keep that student wear their mask as much as possible. That is hard with kids to keep their mask on. And for us, we are a very hands-on preschool as far as learning goes. And I have also raised 2 children who have come from foster home, who I have adopted, who I have dealt with for several years now with attachment issues. And one of my biggest theories for me is keeping things consistent for these kids. And with some of the trauma trainings I have done, I don't want to downplay anything. I don't want to make it not sound important, but I want our students to still feel safe, and that we have created a safe environment for them and a loving environment where when they do come back to us, they want to be here. They want to be at our school. They want to be with their teacher because they feel just as safe with us as they do with their parents. And so we have tried to maintain a very consistent center here. We are definitely doing smaller class sizes. Our state has changed our ratios, which has affected, some of our staffing. I have staff that have chosen not to work during this time frame. Oddly enough, they're all pre-K teachers, but the rest of my staff are all here. They're very much affected by this as far as just hours being cut and everything. But with the consistency, one of the things that we have done is we are still doing circle time. We are still doing centers. We are still playing outside. We're still doing academics, but we're doing it all, like I said, in a smaller capacity. And right now, I don't feel like our students, because we've been able to maintain that, have any kind of trauma as of right now. They are very excited to come to school. I have parents that come into my office on a regular basis. Thank you so much for being open. Thank you so much for loving on my kids and just being there for us while we're a nurse off working or whatever their essential job is. And so right now we are focusing on our ABC countdown to summer. And so every day our kids are coming in and doing something completely different. But there's not a fear in them. We are teaching them that it's okay to not touch everything. It's okay. We're cleaning like crazy, but we trying to teach them social distancing is very hard, especially with toddlers and 2-year-olds, because they want to love on you and hug on you. And I can't say that we don't, push them. We're not going to push them away. But it is hard to do that. And I think, again, for me and my staff, I have tried to instill that it's not my job to put fear into these kids. It's my job to teach them that God is going to take care of us, and that He does not want us to live in fear. And so we are maintaining a positive, fun environment, and so that our kids want to be here, and that there's not this hard let go of a parent when they walk into the door. You have your normal attachment issues where a toddler doesn't want to leave a parent, especially for a new student. But for kids who are slowly but returning, who have been gone for 2 months, they are so excited to be here. And that makes my heart very happy that we have continued to create a safe environment for them where they want to be at. And so for us, we are maintaining what our county is asking of us. But right now we are not at a state where we have to wear masks or gloves all the time in our facility. And even the ones who do, the kids don't even seem fazed by that, which is really kind of nice. And so, anyways, that's for us here.
Wendy, thank you so much for sharing. It just reminds me so much of how all of us in the different states are going to have to listen to our governors and our local health departments, and we're going to have to abide by what they say. So thanks so much, Wendy. Appreciate you. Our third panelist is Lena Efana. I knew I was going to botch her last name up just a moment. Efana Cinco. And Lena is a Russian missionary, and she's currently residing in Spain, and she serves as a preschool teacher of 3, 4, and 5-year-olds in an international Christian school. Lena, thank you so much for joining us today, especially since it's nighttime there in Spain. So please share with us what you're doing to help your children and families maintain those healthy attachments and a positive outlook during COVID-19.
Well, thank you, Sarah. The situation for us is very different. We have been, as of today, we have been in a pretty strict lockdown for 66 days. The children left the school and we left the school and nobody knew. We expected to be gone for a couple of weeks, but we were not able to return. And it has been hard. For more than 40 days, children were not even allowed to go outside. Adults were allowed to go to get groceries, but children stayed inside in the pretty small apartments. Some families I know, they even don't have balconies to go outside. It has been very difficult for all of us, teachers, children, and parents. So I found myself in many ways ministering not just to, like, basically the whole family. A lot of times mothers specifically, they would text me with different questions, not even related to academics. They, some had anxiety, some children had anxiety. Many parents, more than one, many parents commented, we could not exchange cards or anything physical. It was impossible for us. So for us, it immediately went online, all online. WhatsApp, primarily what we used at the beginning, and yes, eventually we switched to Google Classroom. But yeah, I started recording pretty much right away. I started recording short video clips, trying to keep the sense of normality as much as I could. I brought home some stuffed animals from school, specifically selected stuffed animals that I know my children played with over and over. And I just showed them on a screen, pretended talking like this animal. And just many parents said when they see my face on the screen talking to them, it calmed their children down. And it was amazing. I asked parents, and I had to reach out to them all the time. I had to take the initiative because the parents were extremely stressed. We know some families in our school who lost their jobs, families who experienced coronavirus, so it was hard. And I had to reach out as a teacher and constantly ask them, send me the pictures of what your kids did, send me the videos. And it was very messy, yes, and I just went through all of that and made like slideshows for them, shared the link so families can, together with the children, can look what their friends are doing, just seeing each other's faces, staying connected as much as possible in that crazy time. And I am from Russia. Growing in the Soviet Union time taught me how to use very few resources to do fun things. And I was able to keep different lessons in a fun way, like using whatever books they have at home, whatever toys they have at home, egg cartons, like different recyclables. And the families responded so well. The children responded well, and I got tons of pictures from children doing different things. And again, I tried to share with everyone. So one boy is making letters with the car, one is making with Lego, one is making with rocks. It has been a hard, but in a sense, a pretty amazing experience. I felt as hard as it was, it brought us closer together as a community because we were in this together. We still are in this together. And we are a Christian school, but many of our families are non-Christians. And we had a chance to be right into their living rooms, teaching about God, and parents listen. Many of my parents, they don't have English and I don't speak Spanish. So a lot of times I communicate through Google Translate, also challenging, but because my children are very young, my lessons are very simple. I started seeing that the parents' English has improved because they've been doing it with children. They've been listening to Bible stories with children. They hear me pray for their children in a very simple word, so parents could understand what I was saying. And I felt it was a great testimony and the encouragement. So what it's going to look like for us in the future, honestly, I just cannot imagine. We will try our best, but as for now, nobody can even predict what it's going to look like in September. We're still in a lockdown. The children are allowed to go outside at the certain hours with one parent. We continue teaching online. I do different things. I do finger plays with the kids. They love to hear familiar songs or chants. I try to be very personal. I know this child likes to draw, so when I Skype with her, I teach her how to draw simple things. She's an ASL, her parents have no English, so we go from simple shapes to draw a cat or a dog, and she loves it. Another child, he's obsessed with Lego. What I do, we build Lego. It's just being very, very personal. Another child was interested in Egypt. I offered to provide different resources so she would enjoy learning. We are hands-on school, and bringing that hands-on concept home through the screen also was challenging, but I feel we have done a pretty good job doing that. I just look at my own kids' pictures. I look at the upper grades or just the elementary grades, but I'm looking at the pictures and I see that it actually is possible. Is it challenging? Absolutely. But it is possible, and we do hope to continue after we get out of this crazy time. We just get out stronger and connected even more.
Lena, thank you so much for sharing. It's such a blessing to hear your heart for the children and your heart for really trying to reach down not only to the children but to the families as well. So thank you for being Jesus to these families. So Jeannie, I'm going to turn it back over to you and see what questions are coming in.
So a question is related to routines. And panelists, if you'd like to turn on your screens and we can see who would like to answer this. In light of different ratios and maybe different drop-off and pickup times, have there been discussions or any kind of plans about how routines will look once children transition back into the classrooms?
I would say, oh, I'm sorry. I would say that one of the things that you can do to prepare children is do a visual schedule that you might even send home ahead of time of how things are going to be. We have found that visual schedules are have been very helpful for children because, as you know, that unpredictability can be very scary. We've even done them on little small cards and put rings on them where every child has their own set of their own visual schedule. So I would recommend doing something like that.
I was just thinking that the sending it home ahead of time is going to be very important so that our friends can get a sense of what it's going to look like, especially if you're going to drop off differently, especially if parents aren't going to be able to come to the classrooms. Those kinds of things children need to know ahead of time. To ambush them the first day, that's just not okay.
Very good ideas. Yes, I've always been an advocate of picture schedules. I think that brings a sense of security, whether there's a crisis or not. Children like to know what comes next. So thank you for that. Another question is related to meals. Are there ideas or thoughts about how mealtime, snack time, eating at the program will look?
We don't provide meals. Our children bring their lunches. And so we're suggesting that parents bring their lunch in a paper bag because of the germs that can be on those lunch boxes. The other thing is we're going to have to stagger the children and where they sit. We're trying to do at least 6 feet apart, which may be a little bit tricky when we start. As far as snacks go, it's just about seating. The CDC says if we allow lunch boxes to come in, and we're supposed to spritz them with the disinfectant before they go into the refrigerator. So that's how it's going to look different for us.
Thank you, Melinda. Dr. Sorrells, do you have anything to add about mealtime or snack time? It's such an important part of a routine, especially in programs that use family style.
And this is again one of those things, weather permitting, and I also know that there's regulations state by state. But when I had my centers, we used to do a lot of outside snacking. We had picnic tables, even blankets on the ground. Now I get that some states don't allow that, but we would, just spread out blankets and kids would eat their snack outside. Of course, you're in social distance, or at times we've even given each child their own beach towel, where they kind of have their own spot. They can still sit and visit. So as much outdoor time, I would try to build into that as well.
Thank you, thank you. So in terms of attachment, do you foresee a need to really focus in on any type of extra measures to promote attachment? In other words, will children be able to pick up where they left off? They've not seen their teacher for several months now. And what are some measures that you would recommend, or that you're thinking about, to really build that and strengthen that attachment, that bond between caregiver and child? Lena?
As I said, some of our children, they display very clear traits of anxiety. As for now, I'm aware of one child who has not been gone even outside because the parents are anxious. They think it's too early. So for more than 60 days, they stay inside. So we know it's going to be challenging. Every time I connect with my children, I connect with them weekly, with some of them twice a week. I can see that the first 5 minutes, it's kind of like the puzzled look. They know me, but they haven't interacted with me closely for so long. After about 10-15 minutes, they warm up, they start acting normal, and I can predict when we come back, they need to reattach, so to call. And for me, like we all know, it's natural for little kids to build relationship through play, and I'm a big advocate for play for the children. So we need to make sure we provide even more play time for them before, when they have a chance to reestablish the connections they had before with me as their teacher and with each other as well.
Barbara?
I'd just like to share some research that we have related to this. Last year, we launched some research projects in different schools. This was actually in an elementary school. One of the principals told her teachers that they had the option of spending the first 6 weeks of the school year simply just playing with their children, really focusing on the connection. That doesn't mean that academics was completely thrown out the window, but that was not their primary concern. And by December, she could tell which teachers did that and which ones didn't by looking at test scores and grades. And so it's all about reestablishing that connection. Well-nurtured children learn. When children feel safe and connected, learning comes online. And so again, it's just like you said, playing with children, establishing that connection, playing games, playing musical games together where children are moving in sync together. We know that that teaches children what it means to cooperate and connect as a group. So I would do lots and lots of that sort of play.
Anyone else? So another question is related to the attachment and familiarity. So do you recommend that, specifically to you, Dr. Soros, do you recommend that children go back to the teacher that they left school from? Do you recommend that they spend time with that teacher again before maybe transitioning to the next grade level?
I do, especially in those cases when the last day of school was abrupt, where there was no opportunity to bring closure, to say goodbye. I would somehow allow that child to spend time with that teacher, you know, for a few days, a kind of a soft opening, a soft transition back into the normal school year. But yes, I think it would be a good idea for them to establish that familiarity, go back to someone that is familiar after all of this chaos and uncertainty. I think could be important.
Very good idea. Anyone else have a plan for the connections between teacher and learners when they return? Melinda?
I just think it's critical, the same thing. And I'm just repeating what everybody else has said. I think it's important that children go back to the same teachers when at all possible. It would be very easy for us as we're starting another 6 or 8 or 10 days, which just makes my head spin. It would be very easy for me to just move everybody to their summer classrooms. But the reality is that break was too harsh. And we have to go back. I like what Dr. Soros said about a soft opening. So I think that's going to be critical. We'll do that for a few days, just as long as I can staff it. And then we'll move to new classrooms and new teachers. And the play thing is going to be very important. Put the rest of it aside. Sit on the floor with little people and sit at the table with little people. Lots and lots and lots of good conversation, asking open-ended questions so friends can share exactly what their feelings are. And I think these are going to be the most important things to reestablish those relationships, because that's the best thing we do as early educators, right? We establish relationships, and then, as Dr. Soros said, then the learning just takes off from there.
That's great. That's great. Lena?
One of the ideas we have decided to have kindergarten graduation in September. So 10 of my students are going to move into first grade, and we decided it's just no good to have it online or anyhow. They basically will go back to me, and we will spend several days, maybe about a week together, and we'll have a graduation. And we haven't decided whether they're going to move to the next teacher or I will stay with them, but we have decided that this is the best way to reintroduce them to school routines, to kind of invite them back in.
That's great. And our last question, Wendy mentioned teaching children to read eyes, or someone may have mentioned it. I'm not sure if it was Wendy or Melinda, but being able to read eyes or read tone outside of what might be under a mask. Any resources or ideas, any tools that you've come across for just the means of communication with young children with wearing a mask? Melinda?
I think the most fun one that we did, I asked our friends when I was setting up some FaceTime calls with some of my friends, I asked them to bring a mirror with them, a mirror and their mask. And we practiced looking in the mirror and with our masks on and the lower part of our face covered. And we practiced looking happy and surprised. And we practiced looking sad. And we practiced looking frustrated. And we practiced those things. So not only could they see it in my face, but they could see it in their own face. And then we practiced tones. And I think it was important that that mirror was a big part of what we were doing. That it wasn't just that they were looking to me for those cues, but that they could see that they were also going to be giving cues that way. So mirrors, that was a great thing. You all should try that.
That's great. That's great. Lena?
This is an amazing idea. Thank you for sharing, Melinda. Another idea I had is, I don't even know where I heard it. Somebody said helping children to understand to wear masks, especially because they're so young, pretend to be a superhero. So it's a superhero mask, and there is a way also to help them to communicate. My children, 99% are ESLers. It's already pretty hard for them to understand English. We're English immersion school. So teach them baby sign language. Invent the signs when they can give the signs, even they cannot communicate, or even if they don't understand what I'm saying behind the mask because my voice is muffled or I'm not clear enough.
Very good. And we had a comment come in from an attendee, and I thought this was so insightful. She says, in my experience, things become a big deal to children because we make them a big deal. If we take things in stride, then they will likely do so as well. And so that's a very great thought for us to end today, and just think about the resiliency of children. And we bring that angst or that anxiety into the classroom, or we can bring peace and calm into the classroom. So thank you for that comment from one of our attendees today. So we want to help children be resilient, we want to build those connections, and we want to help them have that felt sense of safety. So thank you all very much. Great ideas, great input. This session has been recorded for those who have attended today. There have been questions about, can I listen to this again or share this with somebody? And certainly this will be recorded, and you can go back and listen to this. So as we close out, I want to encourage our attendees to follow the conversations on acsi.org. We have a ongoing discussion about the impact of COVID in our schools. We also want to say that we want to bless you. We have an opportunity for attendees to attend professional development. Through June 15th, educators can access professional development, where over 500 teacher development courses on over 40 different topic-based channels are available for individualized learning. So you can find more information about that on acsi.org. Our platform is called Connexus Premium, and we want to offer that. It's free to our members, and it's at a greatly reduced rate for non-members. So thank you again to our panelists, and Sarah Jo, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jeannie. I just want to thank everyone for joining us today, and thank you, Dr. Searles and our panelists. You did an excellent job. We have a lot of good suggestions and resources to connect with, and I'm sure you will want to share this information with your teachers as well. We also hope that you will be able to join our Monday Connection time with our president, Dr. Larry Taylor, for a short devotion, for an ACSI update, and for a question and answer time. So again, thank you for joining us today, and please know that we're praying for you. God bless you.